This is the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game.
Rule number one is you have to believe in yourself. You're the only one who doesn't think you belong in this appointment. The prospect has already validated your existence by scheduling time with you. Get it through your head you belong here, go in there, crush it, and close the deal.
A place where sales professionals can come to learn from other sales professionals and thought leaders that have mastered their craft.
The difference between a good salesperson and a best-in-class salesperson is only 2 minutes. By spending an extra 2 minutes on what you might think is a mundane task in the sales game, you separate yourselves from the pack, you grow your book of business, you close more deals, and you retain your accounts.
As well as their peers who are still striving for perfection to achieve their why.
I have a wife and 4 kids. Failure is not an option.
Real sales professionals, real stories, real results.
It's no different than being a professional baseball player. You can't be a one-trick pony. You have to be a 5-tool player in order to succeed in this game.
This is the Power Producers Podcast, production redefined. Are you ready to feel the power?
Hey everybody, welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we're refining and redefining the sales game. Our guest today is Mr. Hal Soden from up in New Jersey. What's going on, Hal?
How's it going?
We're good, man. We getting back in the groove a little bit. It's kind of been weird, you know. We're down here we are. We're both in Florida actually, because Kyle works with me.
I'm in Florida. Remember?
still clearing out the haze from Key West this last weekend.
Yeah, I saw it.
Dude, it's like it's so up and down. We don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. I was just talking to Scott Howell from Insurance Guys podcast earlier today. He's got a trip booked to Key West next week or the week after, and asked me what my thoughts were. And I was like, follow everything every day. Like I told him I'll keep an eye out for him. I mean, I dream of being there every day that I'm not. So I get their daily newspaper in my email box and read it. I'm in like back channel Facebook groups, which are always very intriguing because people are asking. It's called Ask the Locals, and it's almost like somebody created this group so the tourists could go in and ask the locals, and then the locals just freaking destroy them with their answers. It's the dumbest question I've ever heard. Why would you think that? You know, like somebody asked the question, "Why is Sloppy Joe's closed?"
Well, we're in a literal and a figurative haze with that Saharan dust cloud that's just hanging over the state, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting, man, because I am probably going to go get tested for COVID tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, like literally, because I'm ruling out whether or not it's the Saharan dust cloud right now. That's what I'm thinking. I'm hoping that it is, but on Monday afternoon, like my head started pounding, my voice is scratchy, my nose is stuffed up and running, and I'm like, oh God. But it's also the same thing I go through with allergies, and the dust wasn't down in the Keys. It was already past there, and it was up here. So I'm really hoping that the fact I actually feel a little bit better now. I went home and took a Zyrtec on lunch, and if that clears it up, then I know it's not the Rona. But whew.
Not good, man.
Yeah. Listen, there is one man that is getting blamed if it is the Rona. And I'm not going to defame him on the air, but if he happens to listen, which there's probably a 25% chance that he does.
I already know who it is.
He knows who it is. Yeah, he knows who it is. He knows exactly who it is.
Yeah, but as we talked about, I was pretty sure that whole test came back negative.
Doesn't mean he's not a carrier monkey.
I mean, so one of my college roommate, one of my best friends, is doing his residency to be an orthopedic surgeon at TGH, and he said that the asymptomatic transmittal is less than 1%. So
that's interesting.
That's current. That's the current science, though, right?
Yeah. Who knows?
We'll find out next week. It'll be something totally different.
True.
Yeah, it'll be different tomorrow. So Hal, listen, man, you've got. I can't actually. I'm very interested in hearing your story. I did not realize that you were 4th generation in your agency. But tell everybody who you are and sort of what you're about and how you got into the insurance industry.
Sure. So, I was thinking about it because I thought you might ask me that. And I was thinking about my typical line to people about how I got into insurance was that I was tricked into insurance. And, I think as much as that's sort of true, it's not really fair. But it's, I was about to take another job. Like I said, I'm actually a fourth generation. My great grandfather started the agency. My grandfather was in the agency. He actually tended to do more real estate back then. I mean, back in the day, insurance agencies would do all kinds of crazy stuff. We did, real estate, taxes. We did, whatever. We didn't do repair. What's that?
Yeah, small engine repair.
Like funeral services. No. Yeah. But we, So, and, he tended to do more real estate. That's kind of what he liked. And then, my father and my uncle joined the agency. My father's the one who really, my uncle as well, really brought us into, believe it or not, commercial insurance. He had a couple key appointments with carriers and started feeding them what they liked, definitely old school type insurance in terms of, going out and quoting insurance and, relying on relationships and that type of thing. And I finished school. I think my father was smart not to mention insurance to me before I finished school. And it's not that I didn't want to do it, even though I saw him stressed all the time. I just never thought about it. I swear, I just never had thought about insurance just because it never was brought up to me. And I imagine if it was brought up to me, I probably would have been more resistant to it. But it was I finished school and I was about to take another job. And that's when my father brought it up. He's like, well, by the way, before you do that, here's something you could do, and you could take whatever you're passionate about and you could do insurance for that, And at the time it was environmental type stuff, and it's like, oh, I'll do environmental insurance, which, really didn't take off. But it was funny because I remember the first day I was like, yeah, come in. He's like, I'm like, now what? And he's like, all right, well, get out of here. Go get some clients. What do you mean? I thought I had this, but thinking back, I am very glad that I had to grunt it out and really find things, because we insured everybody in the local area. We insured, not that we were a big town or anything like that, but I had to go out and really find clients. And that, I think, if it went some other way, like, oh, here's a book of business to work or something like that, I may not have been as successful down the line.
I think you fail miserably, man. I mean, people ask me that all the time. If my boys or my kids would ever come work in the agency, and I said if they do, they start at the ground and work their way up. There's no negotiation with that at all. I mean, they'll start as a CSR or a telemarketer or whatever, because they have to prove their worth. And I mean, I think it's easy for my oldest son, who's basically me 30 years ago, to a T, to look at it and think that he's just going to slide in here and talk me into giving him some sort of a job where he'll show up maybe, and, do some work maybe. And that's not what it's going to be like. He's going to have to figure it out. So,
well, it's like having chores as a kid, or, having some sort of responsibility versus just being handed everything. You don't have that same sort of appreciation and respect for things if you don't.
Sure.
You got to think you got to think you've got a pet. You've got a responsibility. One of the greatest stories ever about my daughter dropping the F-bomb while she quoted Billy Madison in the middle of the living room.
It's good stuff, man.
No, it's definitely true. And honestly, I am so glad that it happened the way it did, because I had to suffer, and I had to really make a lot of mistakes, like you said. And it was really rough. It sucked, and actually, so I have a newer producer now, and part of me is kind of like, man, you're so freaking spoiled. I had like 2 carriers. I had to basically I had to beg people to write their insurance, at the time. And now we're 15 years later, and we've got a lot more breadth and stuff like that. I'm like, man, I wish I was just a producer right now. That would be great,
Well, I'll tell you what, man. I mean, I know in my interactions with Matt, I don't know if that's who you're talking about.
Yeah, Matt. No, Matt's great.
I'll tell you what, man. He's gonna be a good one. That guy's got a good head on his shoulders, and he thinks through things, and you can tell like he on the surface he's motivated and ready to go get it. I mean, I've really enjoyed getting to know him a little bit.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Matt was definitely he's kind of like a new chapter in our sort of story. He's our first real non-family producer because we have 4 principals that are all kind of family, and then a team of account managers. And Matt is kind of like the trailblazer non-family producer, and we took a long time to hire him. We were very careful, and so we're excited about it, and he's actually got a really nice account in front of him right now that would be, it's kind of like validating in one account type of thing.
I'm aware if it's the one I'm thinking of, you're exactly right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a really good conversation several weeks ago, specific to one that he had gotten in. That it would definitely be like getting your first major league at bat with the bases loaded and just freaking hitting it out of the entire stadium if he gets it.
Yeah, I guess at the same time, I hope it doesn't spoil him. Like,
I was just saying that could be a good thing or could be a bad thing.
Listen, I was just talking to another guy that that's exactly what happened. He has a producer that had one really big account that he thought was going to save him, and basically the deal went south. And my buddy was in the parking lot with him and says, "Well, this is the day I was telling you about. You didn't get the account, so unfortunately, I'm going to have to let you go."
Right.
Jeez. So you guys both have worked in agencies with your dads. I mean, I think that's kind of interesting. One
of us more successfully than the other,
right? I know your story, but I'm interested, what your perspective is once you came to the realization that you were not just going to be handed, a book of business and you had to go out and suffer for it. Like what that dynamic was like. Because I mean, I played golf with my dad. Like we don't work together. I mean, we could. There's potential for us to do business together. If the time is right. And I think we're finally at the point where it would, I don't see us butting heads, but I know for sure back in the day, it would have been, we would have been at each other's throats by lunchtime.
You know what the thing is about your dad, though? I think that you're way more anal than he is. And it would probably, the way that I look at it, just from my interaction with him, I've never known him professionally, but if you tell me you're the same guy, then you would definitely butt heads. Yeah. But if you're not the same guy, I could see as laid back as I perceive him to be driving you nuts.
So no, I think he's more laid back when it comes to life outside of work. I mean, he works hard and he works like all day long. Like I'll call him at 7:00 at night. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm working. I'm like, God, man, like, come on, bro. But no, like I said, I think we're finally to that point in our relationship to where it would work. But I know that it wouldn't have always been like that. So I'm interested as to what your experience was like.
Sure. So I actually, I hear a lot of like horror stories of people working with their dads and all kinds of different. I actually don't know your story with your father, Dave, but I've heard, I'm very blessed in that my father and I have different personalities. My father's actually not I actually never thought I was a sales type personality. I didn't really have any sort of, I just thought, I don't know, whatever. I don't know what I thought I was, but my father really isn't. He's very analytical. He's very slow to decision, and my father worked producing, doing something without really anybody's help, without any real natural talent for it. He did a great job, and so he kind of balances me, because it turns out I tend to be a little bit more of a sales personality. For a while I was resistant of that, and recently I'm more like, I take pride in it, but it took me a while to get to that. I don't know why. It just was the way it was. And we really, working with my father works out really well, because we sort of balance out each other. My father's is the traditional, I guess they call it boomer or whatever like that in terms of, works. I can't imagine my dad not working. That's like people are like, oh, when's your dad going to retire? I'm like, I don't know what he's going to do.
Right.
Like he likes fishing, but like really growing up, he coached sports and worked, when we'd fish a little bit and we'd go to the, my dad is, the hardest worker I know, and I'm a hard worker, but my dad's like, I like to say like, I care about my clients. I think I'm good at what I do. But if I wanted an insurance agent, it would be my father, I'd say above me, and really for no other reason that he's technically sound, knows what he's talking about. He's no nonsense. And, he knows what he's doing and he cares. He really cares. You don't get a client from my dad. It's really rare, sometimes I'll lose a client, but it's because I'm just like, I don't get along with them. They're just not a fit for me. Where if they're not a fit for him, he doesn't take either. You don't take it from him, and so, and it's really because he really just doesn't really care deeply. And he's very, very knowledgeable. And that's kind of how I started out. I've kind of, sort of changed my approach that it's not just about like this coverage and knowledge and stuff like that. That's super important, but that doesn't necessarily land you any accounts.
Right.
That's not necessarily getting you any business, being the best insurance agent, and knowing coverage better than everybody else, as much as I think it should, it's just not the case because clients don't understand what you're talking about anyway. So it's anyway.
Yeah.
So
no, I thought your point about the not really viewing yourself as like a sales personality or guy is interesting because I think there's a lot of people that are like that that don't realize how many things are sales. Like my brother, for instance, just graduated college and he's like, I don't know. I don't want to get into anything that's sales. And I'm like, first of all, he'd be awesome at it because his personality is great. You make friends and have conversation with anybody, make them laugh, whatever. But like, if you're a waiter, you're in sales. Like you're selling yourself. You're trying to work for a tip. You're selling, drinks, dessert, like everything. So people don't really fully understand, I think, all the time, just how many different industries or positions are actually sales.
Any business owners in sales.
Completely.
If you own a business, you're a salesperson. I mean, there might be some exceptions to that, but you have to, and yeah, everybody, and whether selling yourself or a product, for me, I kind of view it more as selling myself or selling my services than I am selling insurance.
Sure.
But no, for sure. And I think it is short-sighted of a lot of people to be like, oh, sales. That's not something I want to do. I honestly think we're so like sales is the best freaking, I think it sounds ridiculous. I say it sometimes though. I'm like, I feel bad for doctors and attorneys. Like they have to like bill their hours and they have to I don't think there's a better position than sales. And I think a lot of sales is problem solving and being a good people person. And that's it. You solve.
Well, I mean, doctors and attorneys have to go to school for a heck of a lot longer for starters.
Right. And pay those ridiculous. I think it's, I think sales is just an outstanding. People that don't want to do it and have some sort of idea of it. And that's another thing that my father, he always thought I'd be good at this. And I'm like, why? Why? And he didn't really give me any good reasons. I'm like, why would I be good at this? And I don't understand this. He's like, no, you're just gonna be good at it. And I'm like, all right. So,
well, after 4 generations, Hal, I would say it's in your genes.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Sort of throwing that out there. I don't know that. Let's not have this guy looking like Nostradamus at this point. It was sort of written on the wall.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So, I mean, that's interesting. Yeah. And, I would tell you in a nutshell that the experience of me working with my dad was very educational, very refining or forming of who I am and where I am today. While there was a lot of headbutting and things that have led me to be where I'm at, I really don't have any business working for anybody. That's at the end of the day. my personality is such that if I can't drive the bus, I ain't riding on it. And, you know, sometimes that not sometimes, every time that is going to create a lot of friction, especially when they don't want to let you drive the bus, you know? Yeah. So that's it in a nutshell. You know, we are, hindsight being 2020, I would have been much better served just doing my own thing or staying where I was before we launched the agency that I was at prior. But where we're at now, you know, sometimes you have to go through some of that crap to get to the other side. So, you know, I don't have any ill will or any negativity towards any of that at this point. But at the same time, you know, I'm gonna do my thing. Technically, we're competitors, so
right.
Hate it for him. I mean,
right. Yeah, you know what's funny? I think what did help is that my father kind of let me do what in the first couple of years, I wasn't really anywhere sort of making any decisions, but it didn't take long before I was kind of very involved in directing where the agency went. And that helped a lot. Again, because I am that way too. I am not, I say that all the time. Like, I would not be very good working for somebody, certainly somebody that didn't, you know, allow me to contribute in this, the leading and steering the ship. You know, and that, you know, helped.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the thing is, my skill set is sales and marketing. I do have an operations background because that's what I did, you know, the early part of my adult life. But if your background is not sales and marketing, you know, let the person who does do that really well do it. And that's not, you know, that's anywhere, right? For me, I absolutely love HubSpot. I love automation. It's not what I do. So why in the world would I actually try and control that process? It's so much easier for me just to say, hey, you're the expert. I'm paying you to do this. I'll hold you accountable to do it the way that it needs to be done. But that's where it ends, man. You know, for me, I'm going to get the best person for that specific need that the agency has to go and do it. I don't try and control everything in-house. And I think that's, you know, a lot. It's interesting because, you know, you hear Mike Crowley talk, you hear a lot of people that are like, even Ryan Keating, you know, was on last week, was talking about just the dynamics of growing up in a family agency. That's the difference, right? You guys grew up. I mean, you didn't necessarily grow up in the agency, but you grew up in that environment. I didn't.
Right.
Like, I went out, paved my own way, was successful. I was the top producer in an agency. And then as a 35-year-old adult, 35-year-old adult, decided I was going to go be partners in an agency with my dad and somebody else.
Right.
That was a horrible decision.
Right. Because
by then your adult habits are completely formed.
Sure.
And I'm not somebody that's just going to roll over. Right. You know, yeah. I'm going to, if I have a conviction about something or I feel strongly about something, I'm going to fight for that. And I'm not going to stop fighting for it. Like, yeah. I think that maybe at some point that they thought Chinese water torture was going to go away. And no, it didn't. It just turned into waterboarding. I mean,
right.
You know, I just keep getting more and more tense as time goes on. So that's probably part of it. But, you know, I think it's interesting. I mean, kudos to you and your family that you guys have 4 generations deep in that thing. I mean, and also kudos to you for expanding a little bit and starting to bring guys like Matt in that, you know, are not necessarily, they're not family.
Right. Right. Well, that's important, you know.
So when you required him to get your family crest tattooed in the middle of his back, how did he react to that?
You know, went over pretty well. You know, he's Matt's all in. He's all in with the agency.
That's good.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit. I mean, Kyle, just so you know, Hal is using all of the Xywave stuff. He may have more Xywave products than we do.
Nice.
But I'm interested. You have specific verticals that you go after, right? Like, I know that you're into health and fitness stuff is one of the things you do. What are the other niches that you're in right now?
So one of traditionally our agency actually did farms, which you might think New Jersey farms, of course, yeah.
But having a wife from New Jersey, the answer is I already knew that, but I was absolutely blown away the first time I went up there. So she's from down around Philly and Bordentown, Hamilton
sure.
Township, that area. So I thought that we were I figured I had a realistic shot of seeing Tony Soprano when I got to Jersey, and like I'm looking around at all of this farmland and everything else, and it surprised me. I actually really like it up there. It's not where she's from. I've not been anywhere else other than maybe I think Point Pleasant, but I like it up there, man. I like that area. And what the other thing that blew me away about it is where she grew up in Bordentown. Like there's just a lot of stuff that they still don't have. Like it just sort of caught me off guard in terms of stores and restaurants and things like that. You had to drive over to Cherry Hill or some other place to get to some of those things. And that blew me away. I really don't know why I thought it was the way, other than you see Jersey on TV, it's the Sopranos that you see or something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean that's pretty far. Sopranos is like North Jersey, outside of New York City, and actually, so I live farther from this now, but our agency is probably only 20-30 minutes from Hamilton, from Bordentown, that area, and so it's sort of an area halfway between Philadelphia and New York City. So it does become a little bit more rural and not as urban as some parts of New Jersey are. Although there's definitely lots of very beautiful rural beach. Even some mountains, believe it or not, in the really north part of New Jersey. It is actually a state that, we have a bad rap, but I'm okay with it because I'm okay with people not coming to New Jersey too. It's like, most of us are going down to Florida,
I know. I was going to say, I was going to say I would be okay with people not coming to Florida actually.
Yeah.
But so you guys, you wrote a lot of farms. What other?
Yeah, so that kind of turned into sort of like landscaping, and then eventually, so me and my cousin and my grandfather even started branching out, but we're still 70% construction. So we do a lot of construction. We still, as much as I try to, not get away from it, but sort of diversify our book. And it's like bread and butter for us. And so landscapers was the first sort of foray into that because there's a lot of landscapers in the area. So we do a lot of that. But it's really, when I started, I actually, I quickly dropped the environmental contractor thing, although I do write a couple of them now. For whatever reason, went after HVAC mechanical contractors. That was my first main niche. My grandfather started a niche in fire departments that, because he was a chief of the fire department, and my uncle was, and my cousin, that's kind of more their end. But we do fire departments, emergency services, first aid squads. That's another niche that we have, not me, but, the agency. And then I sort of kind of stumbled into health and fitness. It's not too many single gyms, more franchisees that own multiple gyms. That has become, again, it was an accident. Actually, that was I originally said no, I wasn't going to do it to a client of mine who was a marketing firm, and they said, hey, we want to start. They're going to start a couple different franchises, and they finally decided on a fitness franchise. They're like, oh yeah, we're going to start in Florida. I'm like, I'm not even licensed in Florida. What are you guys doing? So that was my foray into Florida. Actually, begrudgingly, was like, all right, I'll get licensed in Florida and do this. But since then they're all over the place, and then they've referred me to other ones, and so because it's now we call on them. That's certainly a thing for us, and that kind of delved us into private equity portfolio business. That's
good business, man.
Yeah, no,
that's good business all day.
And that's become kind of a new focus. So, we're still, the agency in general is still fairly generalist. We have my father's biggest specialty is janitorial, but he also plastics manufacturers is another kind of thing. In the beginning, I think, especially with my father, Ohio Casualty was our first major insurance appointment, which, became Peerless, and then now it's part of Liberty Mutual. That was a part of that was like what they wanted, was kind of like how we, developed some of our niches. But, now we have, the carrier breadth and the ability to sort of pave our own way in terms of what we want. So, Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Like literally you develop a niche by asking the underwriter what it is they want to write. Like, to me, that's so elementary, but it blows my mind how many times I talk with people that are agents or agency principals that just don't even have that conversation.
Yeah.
Like hold on. You haven't like met with your underwriter and said, hey, what would you really like to write that you're not currently seeing a lot of, or what are you really competitive on that we know that we could win if we get in front of?
Most of them tell us. It's like not even a question that you have to ask them. It's like,
well,
crazy.
Yeah, but they know we're going to go out and freaking go after it with reckless abandon too.
True.
Right. I'm amazed though. I still have some marketing reps that are really kind of like not very specific with that stuff. I'm like, come on, just give me. They're like, oh, well, here's our list of,
I hate the list of recent wins, man.
I don't want to see that. I want to see, I want to see what you are going to be super aggressive on. Again, not that we're a little bit less carrier driven on terms of our niches now. We kind of go more with what we like. But hey, man, if a carrier comes out with something they're the best at, I don't mind targeting that. I'll especially if it's not too far off of what we do. There's still certain things I'm going to turn down no matter what, just because I just have, But then it's funny because like sometimes those things turn into. For the longest time, I refused to write painters. I just wouldn't write a painter. And
what do you have against painters, man?
Because I had a lot of bad experience with painters just not paying their bills. And I'm like, why am I going to write this guy? It's canceling every freaking payment, And then I found out, okay, well, if they're a franchise painter, they have more responsibilities to other people, and so they're actually good clients. But sometimes I don't know. It's maybe that's really more too anecdotal than maybe it should be. It's just a couple bad experiences and turns into
they could be nice accounts on the comp.
Yeah, oh for sure. And I have a couple nice painting accounts. I've probably half a dozen nice painting accounts that the first one I begrudgingly wrote, but then he referred me all his friends, and so who cares? It's
there you go.
It's good. So we try to we got to get better though. My weakness, and part of the reason I joined your course, is my weakness is actually marketing. I'm very good at closing. You can hand me most accounts. If I get in front of them, I'm probably going to write it.
I hear that. I can't even tell you how many times I hear that.
My biggest handicap is other than I can get referrals into accounts but really just general marketing is what we're not the best. And part of it's that we haven't spent the time that we should spend on it, and that's where we know we need to fix that situation. We're getting better, but I'm kind of one of those people, you put me in front of anybody though, and I'm going to be a tough competition, but just cause I have the technical skills and, I usually I'm going to find something,
Did I see somewhere that you're involved with the Big I in leadership capacity or something in Jersey?
Yeah. I'm the incoming chairman of the Big I of New Jersey. Yeah.
Good grief, man. That's pretty substantial.
Yeah, no, it's I believe very firmly in getting involved in your industry. I've never been one to be like, I don't want to talk to my competitors. I want to hear everything my competitors have to say. Like, and honestly, most people I don't really, on an individual basis, they're not really a competitor. Yeah, I might see them once in a while, but I have some agencies that I do see a lot. But for the most insurance agencies, it's just friendly competition. Even in my local area of New Jersey, I'm more friends with probably local insurance agencies than I am with anyone else. But no, I'm a firm believer in learning from other agents. I've always been, and even within the association, I've always tried to promote. I don't really care as much about what some outside person has to say. I want to hear what other agents are doing. I want to hear what's working for them, and I want to. We can work together and better each other. Just like that's why I've gotten more recently involved in the IOA and stuff like that, and it's just all that kind of stuff. I love it. I just love learning from other agencies. I think that's the ultimate. Honestly, I think insurance agents, we have the worst rap, I think, but I know better people the best people I know are insurance agents. And
I would agree with that, man. And I think, it's interesting. My theory on it is always going to be the same. I don't know that anybody will ever change my mind on this one, but agents always want to command the respect of a doctor or not a doctor or an attorney or an accountant. Like we want to be your quote unquote trusted advisor. The problem is that they tie the entire transaction to the sale of a product.
Right.
And attorneys and accountants don't do that. They sell their intellectual capital and their experience. And until the agency world, by and large, can transform their way that they present themselves, like for us, I talk about it, I only have a few stories that I can remember. And one of them is I can go for 45 minutes in an appointment and never mention the word insurance. I don't think that I'm perceived as an insurance salesman by any of my clients, and I know I'm not by any of the prospects. Even though when I walk into a first meeting, I have to overcome the fact that they already have preconceived notions of what it is that I'm there to do. Maybe it's the purple sport coat that I'm wearing that reminds them of the used car dealer. I don't know. But I mean, you have to overcome that objection right out of the box because that's what we have done, right? And I think I've even been on those appointments with people that I think are good agents that immediately they go into a meeting and they start solving the world's problems by telling you the products you need to buy instead of just shutting up and asking questions and listening to what's really going on in the company. And that to me is why I tell you, I think we have genuinely good people in our industry. And I think you would be hard pressed. We talked about this when we had Bob Klinger on. You would be hard pressed to find a more giving group of people than the independent agents that are out there.
Yeah.
Because they're all involved in their communities. They're all donating money to charitable causes. They're donating their time and everything. But yet it seems like that stigma sort of always follows you around. And every time I think it's getting better, I run into somebody who basically says, nope, not quite there yet, because I see how somebody acts or behaves or talks or whatever. And,
right.
It's crazy. But I agree with you, man. I mean, it's a weird dynamic because the competitive side of me doesn't want to be friends with other agents. Like, I want to go in, do my thing, and call it a day.
Right.
But what do you really learn from that? And I mean, over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, rather than me have like a center of influence that's local, it's expanded to a much more national level, and it makes it easier for me to do that.
Right.
Now, if you were 20 minutes from me, we might be friends. Probably not, though.
Right.
I'm probably not because I don't like you, but I'm never going to spend time with you or reach out to you because I'm being overly protective of my stuff. I don't know. But if you're in Washington, oh yeah, Hal, he's the greatest guy ever. Let me tell you what I did to get this deal done. Da, 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 da.
The one thing I'll say is, to be fair, I don't cozy up to a lot of big broker agencies. That's because that's really where my competition is. They're not. And so while they are also usually very great guys, I know a couple of them, I'm not as quick to cozy up to somebody at Marsh or Aon or something like that, because that's really where I'm seeing most of my competition. Those are the accounts that I want the most because I'm going to pay the attention to them that they're not getting. While having the resources that they have, and those are the sweet spot accounts, is the underserved big broker, national broker accounts,
Yeah, I mean, who we go after and who you go after is almost identical.
Right. Yeah.
It's that top end of the middle market. It's low enough that it's a house account. They may or may not even have a producer assigned to it.
They put a new producer on it sometimes, and you're just like,
yeah.
Oh, geez.
Like, I wrote an account that was a manufacturing company that was $750,000 in premium my second year in the business, and it was a house account for Wells Fargo Insurance Services.
It's
like
crazy.
This guy didn't even have a producer that he could call if he needed anything. They just sent them the renewal on email
with almost $1 million in premium.
Yeah,
no, it's amazing.
And I think a lot of agencies don't realize that is the land of opportunity. If you've got game, you can kill it all day long in that space.
That is the biggest eye opener for me, because I used to be intimidated by, Marsh, Aon, Lockton coming up against them. I'd be like, man, but then I realized they don't got their A team on this. Sometimes they got some Ivy League guys, but they don't know anything. They're putting their brand new green guys on things, and they just, I'm sure there's plenty of guys at all of those firms that I probably would have a really tough time competing with, but they're not the ones on the accounts that I'm looking for.
Well, the problem you run into with those is like when they have the subject matter expert on payroll internally for very specific things, and they can bring that person in. But that's what I've experienced in the past. But I don't.
Even that person doesn't care as much usually as I do, because it's just part of what they're doing. Me, I'm like, hey man, this is dinner. This is what I thrive on. And it's like I gotta talk to them today, and then I'm gonna go talk to them another day.
But I think people see that when you're talking to them, though. I mean, you get in front of them, and when you come off that way, it just makes them more apt to do business with you. They know when they're getting not hosed, but neglected, I guess, by some of the bigger guys for sure.
Neglect is I think it stinks, and it's one thing. There's plenty of small agencies that neglect their accounts too, but that's also the big opportunity, and that's why I think now more than ever is I think a great time to be in insurance. Because there's so many people being neglected, and while it sucks, it's still an opportunity.
Right.
So that's there's a huge opportunity and I think a lot of agents, brokers, whatever, would be better served to kind of push beyond their boundaries and find that, hey man, I'm actually better at this than I thought I was. I have these capabilities. Certainly you want to lean sometimes on your carrier or your friends to help you to kind of, I was very lucky to have my father help me, but at a certain point, there's certain things that he just doesn't specialize in, or, there's probably a cap to what he, in terms of, he actually was kind of scared to approach certain accounts, in terms of size and stuff like that. And for me, I'm just like, of course I'm going to go after this stuff. And what I found is, hey man, these are people that need me more than the smaller accounts do.
And quite frankly, are easier to deal with. They're easier to write, Yeah. I mean, unless you're dealing with somebody who's got like some pretty significant product development, or they're doing weird stuff.
Yeah.
For all practical purposes, the stuff is easy to put the insurance program together for. And for us, we're going in and we're looking for those people that have the mod of 1 or higher,
right?
And they're not maximizing their efficiencies in how they operate. And so it makes it much easier for us to go in and use the tools that we use, whether it be a ModMaster and a broker briefcase and all of that. And you've instantly put yourself on a level playing field with the national brokers.
Yeah.
That's, to me, I joke about it all the time. My first 2 employees were ModMaster and broker briefcase, specifically because I knew that I could get in front of people and close deals if I had those 2 resources. There's no way I could replicate that content library or anything if I was operating on my own. It's just not going to happen.
For sure. What amazes me that more people don't use them, that don't use that stuff. I'm like, I'm surprised people don't have, more ModMaster reports they've seen before, but it's almost, routinely, they've never seen this,
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing that's funny about it is I could go in and stand in front of a room full of 1,000 agents and talk about all the great things about it, how it's won business, how many millions of dollars of premium I've written as a result of using those tools. And they're going to walk out and still not use them. I mean, that's just,
no, it's true.
I mean, that goes back to, and I don't know that that's necessarily isolated to our industry. I think it's just people in general, the cream is going to rise to the top. The status quo is going to run in a pack, several notches down. And it's not real hard. I liken it to Tom Stanley, who wrote the book, The Millionaire Next Door, The Millionaire Mind. and then another one, Stop Pretending You're Rich and Live Like a Real Millionaire. If anybody read his books, they would be a millionaire. Like, it's literally a playbook for how people who were millionaires got to be millionaires. And it's not what anybody thinks.
2008 Corolla.
Yeah. It's the number one.
$275,000 house.
Have you read it, or you just heard me talk about it?
No, I've heard you talk about it a number of times, so I'm just remembering facts that you've belted out.
Yeah, number one most driven car by a millionaire is a Toyota
Camry, not Corolla.
Why? Because it's the same thing as a Lexus, but it doesn't have all the bells and whistles, and they buy it used as a lease turn in so that some other person can take the depreciation off of it, and they drive it until
the wheels fall off.
The wheels fall off of it. In the second most driven vehicle, and this is back when he wrote the book, I'm sure it's changed to some degree, is an F-150. But they live in $275,000 houses. They don't buy because it's a prestigious neighborhood. They buy because of A, the school system, and B, the property taxes that are there. Yeah. And they don't have a mortgage. They pay their house off as fast as they can. And then they're just stockpiling money. These people have money because they know what to do with the money. There's no doubt in my mind that I have the tools necessary that if you sent me somebody who had a desire to learn, that I could help them build $1 million book of business over 5 to 6 years, right? Yeah. There's no doubt in my mind. The problem is most people just don't want to do the work. They don't want to listen. Yeah. They're looking for a magic wand. And let's face it, the compensation model in our industry is such that you can be marginal and make $100,000 a year. And some people are okay with that.
I was for a little bit, honestly.
Yeah, like a week.
Yeah. I mean, there was a point in time where I was kind of like just cruising, didn't have, and then I just was like, this isn't enough.
Yeah. So what flipped that switch?
So part of it is, even though, so I kind of like, I have a tough time kind of describing it because I feel like I'm very blessed. I have a lot of opportunities. My family have given me great opportunities, but at the same time, I was not handed something, like I said before, and I'm glad I wasn't, but I feel like it's like this paranoia. Everybody thinks I was, and so I've had this chip on my shoulder.
I have seen, I can tell you right now, I have seen that exact same dynamic across multiple multi-generational agencies where that you deserve to be there. You have the ability to do your job really well, but you go balls to the wall to make sure that you're living with that chip on your shoulder so that everybody else who might otherwise think that you just got handed an opportunity knows differently.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's really common.
It's 100%. And it's funny because I never would have guessed that. Like I was more of like a hippie guy in college, just not really, I didn't care about stuff, but now I'm like, I just want more, I want to succeed. And for another reason, I don't really care about the money. I just I feel like it's my duty to bring us to the next level. It's really, and whether I have family in the future involved in it, it's funny. My son's named after my great grandfather, who's the name of the agency. Everybody thinks that I did that because I think he's going to come to the agency. He may not. I don't know. I know not to mention it to him just because it was my father. Yeah. But I want, in case he does want to, or in case somebody, I want to just pass it on to whether it be him or whether I sell it to somebody or something like that to just, really have a real mark of achievement, and build something, and I think it's been great how it's come to this point, but I want to make sure that, I bring it to the next level.
So I'm interested in a story about the most creative way you have used ModMaster to get a deal done. I'll share mine if you share yours.
Okay. The most creative way I've used ModMaster.
And if you haven't used it creatively, that's cool too. Like, I mean, I'm not going to try and bust your chops.
Well, why don't you tell me the story first so I, think about, what creative ways, because I don't know if my ways have been creative. So.
Okay, so for example, here in Florida, we have a $17,000 split point. I don't know if you have that in Jersey or not.
Yeah.
Okay,
I've
so
dealt with it because I do work in some other states, but no.
yeah, New York has it as well.
Right.
There's $17,000 split point. So any claim that's medical only that's $17,000 or less gets reduced by 70% when it goes into the mod calculation formula. So I will go in, and I've done this multiple times. It's one of my best weapons, actually. If I go in, one of the things I tell younger, newer agents, if you ever have a chance to look at loss runs on the fly, the very first thing you should do is look for the indemnity column on those loss runs, because that's going to tell you the story of everything. Now, you can, if the loss runs are 15 pages for 3 years, that tells you enough of a story already.
Right.
But I mean, if you go in and it's just like, there's a little bit of hair on it, but it looks like it's normal size, I'm not even looking at the med only. I'm looking at indemnity. I want to see how much indemnity is there per claim, how many low dollar indemnity claims there are, and all of that, because that can tell me a lot of things, like whether or not they have return to work. If you've got claims that are $500 worth of indemnity, why?
Right.
Why is that $500 there? Why didn't you just pay that out of pocket, or why didn't you have the carrier pay it? And prior to sending the unit stat cards to NCCI, didn't you just have them send you an invoice so you could reimburse the carrier for what they paid out and make it go away, right? Some states, they don't want you bankrolling indemnity, and I certainly don't advocate that unless you have a pretty clear path to that claim being closed, because the last thing you want to do is have somebody pay indemnity out of pocket for 6 or 8 months, and then the next thing you know, it's a settlement, right?
Right.
Because the settlement's going to fall under the indemnity portion of the claim, and it's going to be right back where it was. So I will go in, and my shtick is that I'm running the ModMaster, number one, to validate that it's even accurate. I want to make sure that it's right, because it's all based on data. And if it's bad data in, it's bad data out. But then once I do that, once I have that validated that it's right, I'll take those indemnity claims, the low dollar indemnity claims, and I'll pull the indemnity dollars out and code those claims as medical only. And then run a second ModMaster. It's literally just a couple of clicks. So I had one a couple months back that was, it was a small, the whole account was about $25,000 in revenue, but the comp was only about $50,000, and it was a hair north of $30,000 in manual premium. But they had a 1.44 mod, so it pushed it up close to 50. The account had $75,000 total incurred on a claim, and $500 of it was indemnity. $75,000 in medical and legal, $500 in indemnity. And there was a second one that was $6,800 and $150 in indemnity. So what I did is I ran the ModMaster, validated the 144 was right, but then I took it and I reran it, and I took the $650 in indemnity out, made those medical only claims, so you got the reduction within the split point. And then when I went and presented it, I could show them that if they would have had good advice from the beginning, that their mod wouldn't be a 144, it would be a 1.2. Right? So they were leaving 24 points on the table, which essentially equated to roughly $7,000 a year over 3 years. So because they didn't pay $650 out of pocket, now they're paying it back in the form of increased premium to the tune of $22,000 over 3 years.
Right. Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like, now that's not what I would expect a normal agent to go in and do, because there is a little bit of secret sauce there. But that's what I'm saying with these tools. I mean, even as number one, a lot of people don't even use or have seen ModMaster before, but if you can take it and tweak it and do stuff like that with it, you're unbeatable.
No, for sure. I'd say my typical use of ModMaster is to kind of promote a return to work program, and show them, hey, if you had a return to work program, because that is, it's sometimes the toughest conversation I have with a client, particularly when they have union employees, because it becomes a little bit tricky. But the resistance to return to work sometimes baffles me, and ModMaster usually allows me to get past that. I guess in terms of creativity, I guess the one thing I found is I have some accounts where it's actually the frequency of the account that's driving the mod, and where I have seen some success there. And it's actually fairly new in terms of me implementing this. It's maybe 3 years I've started doing this, where actually that's where I implement an incentive safety plan. And so we go after incidents, not claims. If we're, and we try to reduce and we're big on having the employees report something that could have been a claim, so that we're really going. And I've kind of been surprised that we don't have the split point, but we still have indemnity usually, certainly is the biggest part of the mod. But I've been surprised recently. I've found more and more clients where they, not a lot in claims, but their mod's high because their frequency is just way more than average. And that's where, applying an incentive safety plan. And I find I get less resistance about incentive safety plans than I do for other things. Again, return to work, I always get resistance, but we usually, I'm usually parting ways if I'm not getting to, the right solution. If the insured is unwilling to work in that way, it may not even be that's the reason, but for some reason, there's some other reason we end up parting ways. But yeah, that's the.
So two things. Number one, listen to the podcast that dropped today with Mike McDonough, because he talks about the triage that he sets up for his accounts, and specifically people who have frequency issues. They are reducing the claims volume by between 60 and 70%, just doing things the way that he's doing them, setting up what happens in the event somebody claims they were injured or is injured at work. The second piece that is, I'm interested in, what's the resistance to return to work? Like what is the resistance that you hear?
The typical resistance is, my employees are just going to love sitting in this air conditioning room, and it's never the case. It's never.
By the way, it sounds like an awesome culture you have there, bud.
Yeah, it's like
you really care about your people.
They would love to get out of the hot sun and sit at a desk and twiddle their thumbs and get, because part of the thing is you can pay less in New Jersey for.
Same here. Amen.
But it is tricky. Some carriers are also sometimes the carrier actually provides some resistance to that, depending on the situation, and also the union does. So
honestly, I'm not a big fan of paying less. I think just pay it and call it a day. You open up too many issues. Thankfully we don't deal with a bunch of union stuff down here. I don't know that I've ever had to deal with a union on anything. So
yeah, we have
counting
a lot
my
of
blessings.
Contractors, and that's where they're getting paid the same wage, and they got some of the, they've got the union's protection. I've got accounts that have had, people drunk on the job site, and the client has no power to do anything about it. It's particularly in New York City.
It's so crazy.
They have no power to even kick the guy off the job site, and so that does become an issue sometimes for us.
One of the things that I've done in the past, and it's been a while since I've had to, because we've gotten pretty good about just ignoring them when they tell us they have returned to work when we know they don't, and just continuing to talk until they realize it. But, this is some secret sauce. So for people who are listening that want to lead with workers' comp, you should really pay attention to what we're talking about here for the last several minutes. But all these companies, or a good number of them, have job postings on their websites, right? Or you could go to Indeed or one of those places and search for jobs they're hiring for. And I use that to my advantage. Like my story that I tell all the time is about a plumbing company where they had horrible, issues, and obviously not a return to work program. And when you go in to talk to the guys, like, no, I'm old school, man. This is a contracting place. I don't have a job count paper clips.
Okay.
Well, no, I understand that. And with all due respect, in order to prepare for the meeting, I did go to your website. It looks like you've had a job for a call center employee posted in perpetuity for the last 3 years. So why not? Why aren't we taking plumbers that we could have released for light duty and moving them into a call center where they can be great support for field staff? The call center employees can learn from them. And by the way, if you ever want a plumber to miraculously heal and get back on their truck, put them in a call center, air conditioning or not, they hate it.
Yeah.
They'll be back to work in 2 or 3 days, if that.
Or even have them cold call.
Yeah,
right.
any of that. But I mean, I think that's where businesses they don't look at light duty as a tool.
Right.
They don't look at it as something that is of benefit to them. And they have all of these jobs that could very easily be light duty jobs that they have a hell of a time getting filled, and they don't put two and two together. Like if as agents, we can go help them connect those dots, you've got a client for life. I've had that client for 7 years now, and the mod was a 173 and now it's a 7.3.
Yeah, that's and ModMaster shows them that money that they're saving, that's huge. I what I can say is I've never actually. So what I typically go, I think that's a great way to do it is to show them, hey, these are jobs you have posted. Why don't you have, But typically, I actually just give them a case study, and because I still have never had a situation where we implemented a return to work program and it didn't work. It
works every time.
It's never happened. But it's funny how many people have said, oh, that's never going to work here. There's no way it's going to work. My guys are just the laziest people on the face of the earth. It's not going to happen. And I'm like, well, try it. And I've actually even made bets with them, like let's just give it a shot, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But,
my job is, I tell them my goal here is to negotiate win-win solutions on your behalf. So if you get the person into light duty and they come back and fill a role that you need to be filled, you win. If you offer them that and they reject it, guess what? They don't get indemnity benefits in the state of Florida, so you still win. Either way, that's exactly what you should be wanting to do. I think the other issue, though, that you have when you put return to work in is just lack of consistency in the administration of the program. We'll let this person slide, or no, I didn't get that note. No, I didn't get that note. I've had a couple of times where I've got clients that I just say, look, we need to fire somebody right out of the box. First person that violates anything, can them, call it a day. Everybody else will fall in line after that. And I think that's the other thing. Different dynamic if you're dealing with union shops, but we're a right to work state, so we have a little bit more latitude going back and forth. But you go out and somebody's released for work and then they don't show up after they've been on the schedule 3 or 4 days. Sorry, that's job abandonment. You're out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's next? You want somebody else somebody else want some? Come on. And that's what you have to do. You have to establish that culture. And I mean, I don't think that employers sometimes do the best job of articulating why that's beneficial to the employee too. Like, you want that person back. You want them to not lose their routine and their rhythm, and that's cultural. Period. Sure. It has to be from the culture.
So without a doubt,
they just don't get it. So I have a question. Did you actually lose a bet when I watched you walking through a fire pit at Innovation? Was that something that you bet somebody on, or
no?
Kyle, I was sitting. They had fire pits outside of the place where we were staying, and I literally looked over and I saw Hal like walking through fire. And I'm
sounds like whiskey dents.
I said that guy right there had a great time on the harbor cruise.
Did have a great time on the harbor cruise, and that's really probably most of it. I have certainly respect for fire, but I've also I've done a little bit of. I used to, very hippie thing to do. I used to spin fire. So you'd actually have it's like a Maori thing in New Zealand where you actually have Kevlar balls where you'd light them on fire, and now everybody's going to see.
Dude, so you were all into the opening ceremonies when those guys were twirling the fires.
Yeah, I could have helped them out. I could, hey man, I'll go there for, but I kind of know what's going to burn me and what's not, even when I'm a little bit tipsy. So it's, if I fall, and I guess I'll admit that might not have been a great idea. But as long as I can stay on my feet, I'm okay.
I think it was a great case of proving that you can take calculated risks.
Yes. Well, it's funny. A lot of people might assume that I'm sort of like a risk-averse person, but I'm definitely not.
I actually would have assumed you were a carnival performer.
Yeah, no. I've done some pretty risky things in my life for sure, and but it usually calculated. Definitely, I have considered it more than people probably thought I did. So.
I wish I could say the same. I have definitely taken the risks, but there was no calculation involved.
Never been good at math.
Zero thought process. Well, listen, man, we've been going an hour. I want to be respectful of your time. It was cool chatting with you. I always enjoy talking with you. thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
You know, if, as we said, getting started, people will want to hear from, you know, hear your perspective on things. They may want to reach out and pick your brain, especially knowing that you're like Johnny Big Eye now. I mean, that's how do they get a hold of you? What's the easiest way for them to reach out?
So you can always email me, hwsoden@sodeninsurance.com. I'm not averse to a friend request or anything like that on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. And if somebody really wants to get in hold of me, you can call my cell phone. I'm probably not going to answer it, but I'll call them back, 908-420-3478.
So I'm not averse to a friend request on Facebook either. And it appears that I have the market cornered on Asian women that are young and have 2 friends that send me a lot of requests.
I'm not saying I may not reject it, but you know, if they're in the insurance industry and I can see that, I'll probably accept them.
Yeah, it's funny, man, because and this is interesting, and I'll say this and then we'll go. There's like these, I'm trying to figure out how they do it, but there's like these little splinter cells of life insurance agents.
Yes.
That if you take like a request from one of them, the next thing you know, bam, you got like 20.
I've tried to weed that somehow, and I haven't figured it out.
You know what? I used to do it by checking our mutual connections and then I realized, okay, great. Well, this isn't good because some of my mutual connections are just accepting friends from anybody. So then I started triangulating the kingpins of this life operation. And if they were the ones that, if I saw that they were a mutual friend, they're out. Sorry, guys.
I've done that. I've not been as successful, but I've tried to kind of figure it out but yeah, you sometimes have 20 mutual friends of people, and, it's just that they just are very accepting of people. So
yeah, it's crazy.
Not that I'm not accepting of people, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I hear you. Well, listen, I hope you and your family have a great 4th, man. Give Matt my best.
Will do.
I haven't talked to him in a little while, but hope you guys have a good 4th and stay safe and healthy up there. I know you're trying to bounce back. It's a little bit different than it is here, but I don't know that we're all together that different in the long run.
Sure. No, without a doubt. It's definitely pretty interesting here. But likewise, you have a happy 4th too.
All right, brother. Have a good one, man. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.
Hal, thanks, man. See you.
You've been listening to the Power Producers Podcast. You can follow Killing Commercial Insurance on Facebook and YouTube. And if you want to take your game to the next level, check out our book, The Extra 2 Minutes, and our website, killingcommercial.com.